Hey everyone, this is Matt again, and this is the Wormhole Manifest podcast. This is another special introduction to this episode, because if you've listened to the last episode, I did a special introduction to that one to let you all know and give you a heads up that the audio recording on my track for that episode previously and this upcoming episode that you're going to hear now just got totally jacked up. So I want to apologize for that. It's not the quality that I'm striving for, but I just want to let you know that I have fixed the issues. And if you go back and listen to that episode and that quick special intro, I talk all about what happened to both that episode and this one. So I won't repeat all that, but this is the second one out of the 2 episodes that got messed up for the audio on my tracks. And when you hear it, you will know. But I do encourage you to listen to this episode coming up because I really felt good about it. The special guest that I brought on the show is amazing and has some great information to pass. So please bear with me and the technical difficulties and stick around for future episodes because I've got it almost all ironed out, and hopefully we won't run into any of these kind of issues in the future. But if we do, it can happen. It happens. It's just something, the world's not a perfect place, and screws fall out all the time. So just bear with me and please enjoy the episode. So here we go. Later. Welcome back, friends, to yet another exciting episode of the Wormhole Manifest podcast. If you've listened to the show before, then you know the deal. If not, then this is how it goes. I invite a guest to join me every episode to venture through the wormhole, but in order to go through in order to go through, your name has to be on the manifest. It's like for safety reasons and liability. Don't want somebody to get stuck somewhere, and it's just like passenger shit. So during our travels, we discuss many things with a common theme of mental health awareness. Because nothing is more important than our own mental health and taking care of ourselves so that we can help take care of others. This episode, I'm excited. This has been a while in the making, I guess, even though I haven't done any real research or wrote down good questions for this episode. It was kind of short minute. I think I asked our guest tonight like a couple days ago, but our guest tonight is Stephen from the DreamHerbally. Is that right? DreamHerbally is your company?
DreamHerbally.
Yeah, and the thing that we've been in discussions for a while about being on the podcast. You had a project that you were doing because you're in the behavioral science and research methodology. Anyway, let me introduce you first. Stephen from DreamHerbally. How are you doing today, man? How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm doing great. I am really happy to be venturing through the wormhole here. It has been a long time in the making, and I'm glad we could finally get our schedules aligned and have this work out. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you're here. The project that you did was very interesting. I was very interested in that, and the work that you do is just amazing stuff. I'm very, it really resonates with me. I love learning all these new things since I've been coming out of my
little bubble of, mental health crap, like depression and anxiety. And I've ventured down this road of trying alternate means of uh, helping myself, I guess. Like, all the other things I did that are typically used, like medications and therapy and all that, like nothing really was working back in the day. And I've mentioned briefly on other episodes about my history of mental health stuff. But the past couple of years is when I started dabbling into the realm of psychedelics and microdosing to uh, see what it has to offer. And man, it blows my mind how different I am today than I was even like maybe 2 years and a few months, plus a few
Yeah.
months ago. And since, and my research is what led me uh, to find to find the Discord server where I met you and a bunch of other guys that are kind of along, in the same realm of understanding and research of what psychedelics and what the benefits can offer people, and how we can, yeah, just better ourselves and be,
Mm.
part of society. But like, it's not like the old stigma of the old days when people were like, oh, you use drugs, like, and you're looked down on. It's like all these substances are, a lot are natural and beneficial and helpful to our civilization and how we've managed to evolve to the point that we're at today. I think psychedelics are kind of responsible. I think, from the bit of research that I've done, and I haven't done even close to the amount of research as people like Rian and from the Reincarnation podcast and Hamilton Morris. He's into chemistry and all this stuff. And there's tons of people out there that have been into this for so long. And I wasn't. It's not that I wasn't interested, because like 20 something years ago, I did try a bunch of psychedelics or random substances, and they were what they were, but I wasn't into that culture. I wasn't into uh, I wasn't into I was a military guy, so I was like, you can't get caught with drugs. I wasn't smoking weed or anything ever, and I didn't do that until I retired, like back in 2015, and then I smoked like crazy. But but to bring you into this, because I'm starting to ramble already. The thing that was interesting was your project that you started that we talked about in Discord, about the correlation between um, psychedelics and dream work. And if you want to go ahead and give us a bit more detail or go into your behavioral science and research methodology, the Dreamwork facilitator certification program, I guess is what you were going for when you were doing that project. Yeah, let's dig into that, man.
Sounds good. Yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, plant medicine in general has been really transformative for me as well, in my own ways. And like you, I had, a little background, not much, prior of recreational use of, small, moderate dose mushroom trips, that kind of things where,
Yeah.
the colors look cool and all that. And, that was it for a little while. And I reached a point where, based on my mental health, I needed something more. And it felt like that's when the healing properties of psychedelics found me. To give a little background, I was kind of moving along through life and got to a point where I felt like I had my life set up exactly how I wanted it. I had just gotten with my wife, and we were, living blissfully for a couple of years and all that. And um, it just felt like, wow, I've got like the final piece here. Like everything is just great. And it's almost like, in retrospect, I feel like, you know, it's a whole other topic, but I feel like we're almost not meant to coast for too long. Something's going to come along to facilitate some growth or something.
Oh,
But for me, it was,
yeah.
like I started to become basically afraid of aging and death, and the idea of the impermanence of my blissful state became so dark for me that I felt like I wasn't even able to fully enjoy it anymore because I was becoming attached. And that idea of impermanence, at the time I had a very materialistic worldview. I would have called myself agnostic, from a religious standpoint, but I was basically,
Same here. That's what
like,
it said on my, or wait,
yeah,
agnostic? Yeah,
yeah.
that's
It's like,
like,
you
go
admit
ahead.
like you don't
Sorry.
know, right? Like
Right.
agnostic literally means not knowing, but I didn't feel any compelling reason to believe in anything specific. I had grown up in religion, and that did not resonate with me as I became older and all that. So it's like essentially a pretty, for me anyway, it was like a hopeless place to be in terms of, wanting some type of, thing bigger than all this, right? Like
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
could kind of count on that, would cause impermanence not to be such a daunting thing, that kind of thing. So that's where I was when, I think in retrospect it was by design that the greater properties of psychedelics became known to me. First through reading, I did a lot of research personally before even having, the experiences that were ultimately transformative. But, it took me to this place where, um, from my perspective, it just became a sense of knowing that, there's way more than this. This is small compared to the bigger picture. And, I still don't know a lot of the specifics about what's all out there, as I think most of us would say if we're honest. But, it was enough to pretty much remove the idea of impermanence as a concern. It's like there is a continuity there that, um, I couldn't deny. So that's kind of the foundation behind my psychedelic journey. What sort of like got me down this trajectory of wanting to learn more. Um, I could get then into the specific project. It even that was kind of the product of an additional secondary journey, kind of through um, dreaming and understanding more about, the powerful state that the dream state is. Like that was the type of thing where once I had my transformative psychedelic experiences, I kind of became wowed by altered states of consciousness in this more exploratory, curiosity driven way, as opposed to just, trying to feel good for a little while. Those types of states, this was more,
yeah, yeah,
like learning that plants can illuminate a lot for us. And, so I started to join, and like you said, you joined this Discord community. Like I feel like for me that there's suddenly, when you have transformative experiences like that, there's suddenly this need to find people that you can relate to in these ways. So,
yeah,
we find
absolutely.
communities like that where there are others that we can actually talk about these experiences, because even though they're less stigmatized, they're not, fully mainstream at this point. um, so with those communities came a lot of hearing what different people were doing or finding, and, a drive to research into different plant medicines. And um, I I am a regular cannabis user, and that has this effect where it dampens dream awareness for a lot of people. And, that was the case for me. Um, so I learned, wow, there are plants for this. I started researching dream herbs, and, developed this blend that got me like not only my vividness back, but after a few months started lucid dreaming unexpectedly, and, really kind of showed me, wow, there's a lot here. Um, and the more I went down that rabbit hole, the more I wanted to learn from it and about it and study it. And so, yeah, I took this, like a postgraduate certificate program on Dreamwork facilitation, which is, what brings us to this point of, I was doing this project.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
And it was a great project too, because like, to uh, share kind of my experience, like or what kind of brought us together it made me realize, like, wow, this dude's pretty interesting. Like, this is kind of, and like you said, with the Discord community and with the transformative psychedelic experience, you do want to reach out and find others who have either been there, who have seen the psychic knife, like, I don't know if you've seen that meme, but it's hilarious. And it's like, you've been there and you've seen that, and it's like, what other kind of things, something funny about that is that I think it always makes me wonder, and I start to feel very like judgmental of people that don't want to explore or don't want to do research in general. Like, I mean, there's a lot of different areas that people work in, obviously, like with healthcare and all that. And there's doctors and people are specific to whatever their form of healthcare, or, there's surgeons and people that work on feet or whatever kind of body part, and that's what their speciality is, or whatever, or specialty. So the thing I think with psychonauts, or the people that are very into psychedelics, is their need to explore, like, not just consciousness. I mean, yeah, mostly consciousness, but like to understand how the universe, not even just to understand how the universe works per se, but to understand more things that are out there, to basically learn to ask more questions. Maybe that's kind of a thing. And it always amazes me that there's people out there that are not interested in learning new things. And that's when I have to tell myself, I'm like, don't be judgmental. People are not, not everybody's interested in the same things, and we all can't go on the same path together, and it's just not going to happen. But the thing that's cool about, like, the Discord community is that a lot of us are on similar journeys, but there's, different aspects. Just like a specialty for a doctor, we all kind of specialize in our own different things, and that's what's really cool, is we can share things from our perspectives after having, like, a psychedelic experience, and then relate those experiences to the other people that have a completely different experience. And what you brought up was the whole dreaming thing. And since we were talking in the chat, and you were bringing up that you were doing this project, and I was like, man, I'm like really interested in that, because I have some really, like, my entire life I've always been interested in dream work, or in dreams in general, because I've had some really crazy, not even before I did psychedelics, there was just like, I was always very curious on how the brain works and can take us to, like, these other places in our own mind, and then I've seen a bunch of, I'm obviously a big sci-fi fan and anime and technology and all this stuff. And I'm like, there's got to be more to our minds than what we know, obviously. But I'm like, I want to explore that. And so you started talking about the dream thing, and I think I shared in a bunch of chats, like, a bunch of random dreams that I had, and they were very, vivid in detail and stuff. And I remember the project, and when we talked, I actually wasn't dreaming as much at that time, but I had a few that stood out. And when you worked with me through that, like, I described the dream, and then with the education and research you've done, I just remember it being really cool and really amazing how you basically told me, you recited the dream back to me from your perspective with, like, different elements that I hadn't thought of before. And I was like just thrown back, and I'm like, whoa, that, like, it's almost like a psychedelic experience in itself, because you're just like, or it's like, when you have one of those light bulb above the head moments, and it just kind of like, aha, that's the aha moment. And you're like, why didn't I think of that? It seems so simple, but when you tell somebody something, and I guess maybe that's why therapy and things work, because like I'm doing now, I'm just rambling a bunch of stuff, but that's coming to my mind that I think is interesting. But if I'm talking to a therapist, they will take notes on all the things, and then they will recite it back to me almost in a way that makes more sense. And then it just blows my mind. I'm like, it's like I dance around the whole topic and subject, but like the project itself that you were doing, like it just made so much sense, and it made me more interested. But you can tell the better, like what the project was about the correlation between the dream work for like psychedelic integration. Um,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I would say it started when, so taking this course, this was after, having more psychedelic experiences. And, for a while, I started getting into dreams out of curiosity to explore in this open-ended way. I didn't really have much of a framework for working with them. I saw them kind of as like a barometer of my energy, and maybe it would bring up some intuitive ideas here and there. And a lot of it was the adventure of it too. But it wasn't really driven by a full appreciation for what dreams can offer us. So I started, part of this coursework was to learn different techniques for working with dreams. So, we did that initially by working with our own dreams, those of us that were taking the coursework. And as I was working with my own dreams and learning these different techniques for how to work with them, I was finding, similar to what you said, a lot more of those aha moments, that intuition, being triggered about what my dreams were telling me. I was, through reading a lot about dreams and the research that has been done and all that, becoming more and more convinced as I went through it that, there is, we're able to tap into greater intelligence through the dream state. There is guidance we can be pulling from it. These kinds of feelings and perspectives. And as I was working with my own dreams, I was starting to feel I was getting clear guidance through having more and more of those aha moments, more activation of my intuition by implementing these techniques. Like I was very blown away by just working with my own dreams, how these techniques can really elicit that kind of intuitive guidance. And the funny thing that was happening as I was doing this is I had my last deep mushroom trip is at this point like a year and a half ago, and it was the kind of thing that put me on hold because it was a very different experience from a typical, not that there's really a typical trip, but from any of my past ones. And it basically showed me, there's this state of non-duality for you to see, but you have this form of energy blockage that's getting in the way of that. So you can't see that right now. And this is why. And it gave me a lot of specifics in that state, at least enough for me to understand pretty well what my issues were with this energy blockage. And like, okay, wow, like I went away kind of thinking, well, I want to work on that before, diving into anything like that again, because this just showed me that this is getting in the way and all that. And what was happening was the dreams, the guidance I was getting from the dreams, that intuition, that sense of direction that I was getting from them, it was very consistently about how to work on dealing with this energy blockage. And it was what struck me was the cohesion between the two states, that the psychedelic state is showing me this, and the dream state seems to be also working in a different form on helping me clear my energy flow. And that was really striking to me. So I, toward the end of this program, we had this practicum, which turned out to be this project that you were involved in, where, we needed to kind of propose a way that we were going to implement dream work with other people. Up till then, it was all just kind of dream groups within among the other students. And, this was the first time of going outside of the other students for this. And I felt like I wanted to do this among people who had recent-ish psychedelic experiences, and see if, maybe this isn't just me. Maybe for for these other people, there will also be a synergy between the two states, that maybe their dreams, if we go through these techniques, will be also showing guidance about how to work through issues that they had previously had illuminated by psychedelic experiences. So that's why I was in our Discord, where people have had these experiences, looking for participants and how we linked up and all that. But yeah, it started from my own experience in the course, and in the handful of people that I worked with there, I would say without fail, there were linkages. And, it did feel for me like the common denominator was our energy flow. And I mean, you can corroborate this if you agree, but like, the way I approached it was not at all meant to be leading you in that direction. It was meant to, explore open-endedly, if we go through these techniques and you look at your own associations, what is it telling you? Right. So it's like, I don't look at myself as someone who interprets other people's dreams. I look at myself as someone who can facilitate the process by which you or whoever is going through the dreamer is able to arrive at those own intuitive places.
Yeah.
So that was the nature of the project.
And that's what is really cool about it, because, a lot of other kinds of things out there, you do kind of get a sense sometimes, if your intuition is on the mark, you know when things are leading you to a certain point. You can kind of sense, anything, like if there's a scam going on, a well-intentioned person with a good mindset that has a lot of experience will say like, nope, that's scam, but like with something like this, complete opposite, like you said, it's a facilitating thing. Like, and I think that's what it was. I remember the most was when you were kind of telling me basically what I had said, and kind of like a shorter script. You were like this, and this, and then I was like, oh yeah, those things. And then I think you didn't lead me, but you made me see that I already kind of knew the answer. Like, and that's, I think, what a good facilitator in anything, any kind of job or career or speciality, like they will help you to see that you have it in you. But like, we don't always realize that, as I think our human minds work. We get so caught up in all the random things that are firing, in our brains, and it's something might be completely obvious, and we won't see it until we go through what we're thinking. And I think that's probably another good reason that things like therapy are good for people, because, talking out all your issues or just experiences to someone else, you get that other kind of unbiased opinion, or someone else's guidance, I guess, on what they think, and then they may tell you like, this is what you said and this is what you said, so based on those things that you said, and in my experience, others have had this kind of same thoughts or whatever, and processes, and all that. So like, this is what generally that leads, and then you're like, oh man, like, I didn't even think of that. Or the opposite is like, you may be facilitating somebody, and they come up and they just straight out flat tell you what they thought. And I think, going into remembering what we talked about, I remember we were talking about, I don't know if you took notes on our discussion during that project, but like the dream that we discussed that we were working on with me, was one that I had saw my dad, and in my dream, I saw my dad being very like frustrated, and he was moving a lot of stuff around and things, and doing a lot of stuff, and he was just frustrated. It seemed like he was very overwhelmed or something, and I basically went up to him and I said, it's okay, you it's all going to work out fine, or something like that, and the obvious thing almost is like, since in the dream, and since the things I had been working on in my life, um, my my dad that I was talking to in my dream was like kind of a representation, or a manifestation of myself. Like, I was telling myself that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be overwhelmed. You can be overwhelmed, but it's going to be okay eventually, like something like that. And that's just, I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly what we all talked about, but that's kind of what I got out of that. And it's kind of, it stuck with me a good bit. And I realized there's been several other dreams since then, that have been kind of similar, different situations, but then I'm like applying the method of like what you were talking about, with the facilitating and the dream work, and I'm like, okay, so if I look at this like this, as if I'm somebody else listening to myself talk about my dream, you know, this is, and man, it blows my mind every time how quickly you can start to get into a pattern of recognizing what some of this, like, situational things in your dreams, or symbology, or anything, like, can actually represent like parts of yourself that you may not have been dealing with, or you know but I don't know, you can
Yeah.
probably go into that more deeply. And
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I do recall that. I'm glad you remembered my notes. I did take notes, but they're on my other computer, so I don't have them right here. And I didn't think to go look at them. But yeah, I remember that well now that you refreshed my memory. And yeah, that I'd say we all have multifaceted personalities, right? We have a lot of voices throughout our lives that talk to us in different ways. We have analytical minds, which, you know, that's great and beneficial in helping us get through life logistically and all that. But there, it can feel like, a lot of different conflicting ideas come in, and we can feel like, which ones of these do we listen to? Which ones of these do we shut out? That kind of thing. And I find that Gestalt method of going through a dream and treating really every notable person or symbol that came up in the dream as if it's a part of yourself. If this were a part of yourself, what part of yourself might it be? And come up with the closest answer you can to that, and go through and rewrite or restate the dream as if every single one of those people and symbols is a part of yourself, and see what it looks like. And when you do that, not it doesn't mean that every component of the dream is necessarily representing a part of yourself, but by going through that process, we find we increase our likelihood of finding the ones that are right. And we
yeah,
do that through our intuition. It's like, we could go and reread the dream, say we're working on our own, and we write it down and just, reread the dream as if everything's a part of ourself. And oh, that doesn't really resonate on an intuitive level. It's like, okay, move on. Maybe that's not that, or maybe that's not, the part to focus on right now. And then when we have those aha moments, like you did in this case, intuition it's a form of intelligence, and it's a form that I think we suppress with the analytical mind, and especially in Western society, and just kind of the way that
yeah,
social conditioning is. But if we're able to hone our intuition, we know when that comes up in dream work, we know that, okay, this hit me on an intuitive level. There's something here for me. And, so maybe we come out of that method and we found one clear answer that this is referring to this part of myself. That's great. It's fine if all the rest aren't. But I love that technique because, yeah, it's like, I find, at least personally, that the incidence is very high of the times when, there are parts of myself coming through in a dream. Um, so I tend to get a lot from that one.
yeah. It's amazing, man. It's the mind, the human mind and consciousness in itself is really an interesting thing. And besides, I don't think it takes psychedelic experiences to appreciate it. It certainly helps, I think, in a lot of cases, for someone who, uh, I don't know what got me into psychedelics to begin with. Like, I just wanted, it sounded cool. Like when I was younger and I was an artist and did all kinds of stuff, and it seemed like, expand your consciousness. It was kind of like a,
Hmm.
if I would have met like Timothy Leary back in the day, if was alive back then, but like if I would have met him, and he probably could have totally, you know, taken me away and like said, this is your path, you need to explore things in your mind and consciousness and all that. But I wasn't quite there when I was like 18 or 19 when I first tried acid for the first time, and I was like, I had just talked to friends, and they were like, yeah, you see a lot of cool colors and very different things, and it makes you think differently, but um, when I was in the military, and I had talked to a few friends that were also in, and they had also tried a few different things, so we all were kind of resonating, I say, like a little more, a little better than the majority of the people we were in service with, because when you're kind of in that small group of people that have ventured out or taken a little journey, of the mind, you tend to locate those people that have also been there, and shared
Hmm.
experiences. And so, like, the majority of the time I was in service, I ended up drinking a lot, and alcohol, it can give you different experiences, but there's nothing near as close. It's, I don't know. I think it just more like numbs your body and emotions, and I don't know, not even that. It might
Hmm.
heighten some of them, like things like anger. If you're like an angry person in general, like if you drink, like then you, I've met people like that too that seemed really cool when they were sober, but then they got drunk and just got like totally insane, violent, and I'm like, holy shit, like this is not the guy that I was hanging out with like 2 days ago, and it amazes me how like different substances can take a person out of this reality and like bring out maybe not like necessarily these people that are being suppressed inside, but maybe that's part of it. But it takes away a lot of this inhibitions and all that, and shows you not necessarily who they truly are. But the thing I like about psychedelics is that you do, um, for me, it's a form of nowadays. Now since I've in the past couple of years have gotten back into the research and realized that how beneficial they can be for things like mental health, and just looking at what they've provided me in the past 2 years, um, it's amazing that I think about my dad when he was in the nursing home before he passed away, and I think now, and I look back, and I know it's not a thing. I don't torture myself and say, if you would have known this, you could have done this or whatever. But it's just an idea, and I'm like, it's interesting that if he was suffering any kind of like anxiety or anything, like it would have been interesting to go hang out with him and maybe like trip on some mushrooms or something, and get into like that kind of a different space with them. It would have been really cool. And I won't discount the fact that it may not ever happen either because of my experiences now, and also like what you were saying earlier about how that permanence of this life, like how aging and getting old, like, it does it can create a lot of anxiety and put you in a dark place if you just thinking about, you know, we only have a short time here, um, that's what's helped me to get over a lot of past grief of a lot of the people that have passed. Um, is I've realized that they're not gone. All these people that I've lost are not gone. They have just moved their energy has moved to a higher frequency that is not able to be maintained in this three-dimensional physical meat sack of a body that has a shelf life. Like our bodies have kind of a shelf life, and once we come out of our mother's womb, we grow, just like a fruit grows on a tree, or anything like that, and then it reaches a certain ripe age, and then it starts to wither and die. But it doesn't mean that fruit doesn't really exist anymore, and that's just my own personal opinion. That's what I have come to think and feel and believe, that that fruit is part of every other fruit. So even though that fruit may not be there, that specific one, that I wanted to pick that apple, like that one may have withered and rotted and whatever, but there's a million more apples out there. And it's not that those are the same, and it's not that they're much different, but they're all kind of linked together, maybe. Like, that's just things that I've been processing for since that my first mushroom trip since retiring out of the military, and kind of starting to realize I need to get off a lot of these medications that were making me a zombie, and getting me interested in researching this stuff. It's like we are all connected, and there is something more, and when you realize that, it's like, oh shit, like I don't have to sit here in my bed, like feeling really shitty all the time. I can actually get up and go do things because it's not so bad. And I need to utilize this time. Damn it. There I go, rambling again.
Oh, good. No, I appreciate what you're saying. I feel, my perspective is similar on that. And it used to be like, all really in the analytical mind, where, I'd have those internal conversations that made me agnostic and all that, and feel like, there isn't necessarily more than this. And it's like, well, from my standpoint, without having had these expanded consciousness states, I wasn't seeing the evidence to really point to anything specific more than that. And it was kind of, this analytical evidence-based approach. And I mean, you mentioned alcohol being kind of almost like a opposite of psychedelic type of thing, in the sense that it's more numbing. And it's like, I mean, obviously people can use alcohol in different ways, and I'm not judging all use of alcohol, but just from a scientific standpoint, it is essentially doing what you say, and that it's, we all have the default mode network that's kind of, what's helping us get along in day-to-day life, sort of using the past to predict the future and help us navigate that and all that. And alcohol activates gives the default mode network more control over the brain, whereas psychedelics are doing the opposite. They're minimizing the impact of the default mode network, and therefore allowing you to explore more of your mind and get out of that, I'm conditioned to anticipate this next event based on these past experiences type of approach. So once, you're able to get beyond that, everything in my experience feels so much bigger. And, that's where I say, like, I saw this life, as such a small component of a much bigger whole and all that. And, then like my mind was opened up to a lot more, which eventually led me to more evidence. But at that point, it's like I didn't even really need that evidence that I eventually found, because having that experience was like enough to completely obliterate this idea that, this life is all there is. But then, like, we get to, like these different states. I was talking about the linkages between the dream state and the psychedelic state. Really, as I've experienced it, everything is energy, right? It's all vibration in some way. There are different vibrations tune us into different experiences, different, frequencies carry with them, different components of the universe that we can access in different forms. And like that to me as a foundational element of everything suggests already that there's going to be continuity between these states, not only the different states of consciousness, but the different states of what we would consider alive or not alive. And because you in these states are seeing that, well, we're more than the physical body. So this concept of the soul is introduced and all that. And it's like, um, there's now I've seen evidence through different states of consciousness that different states of like being alive or not are accessible. That was probably not the most eloquent way to say that, but to give an example to maybe like express a little more what I mean. The out of body experiences that I recently was reading Robert Monroe, and he had a lot of these experiences kind of helped to bring this conversation to society where it was a very underground thing before him. And he documented a lot of his experiences, and like he would give examples like he had a friend that died, and he went to try to visit that friend in the astral realm. um, but when the first time he actually reached him, and by this point he had become pretty good at using his mind to direct him to a person that he was seeking out among living people anyway. When he tried to do this with his friend who had passed, um, he initially came back thinking that like, oh, it didn't work this time. He had an experience and everything, but he didn't think it worked. And it turns out that the person he was interacting with was a younger version of his friend from prior to the point where he had met him, a younger looking version, I should say. So
Oh,
like
wow.
he became friends with this guy, say when he was 50, and this person was like appeared as he did when he was in his 20s. He later found this out by seeing a picture, talking to this person's wife who was still living, and seeing this picture and being like, oh wow, I actually did meet him in the astral. And it's to me that's type of thing is a counterpoint to the idea that um, his mind created this experience based on simply what he had in mind that he was going to experience. Because if that was the case,
Hmm.
it would have made up, maybe how this guy looked when he was younger, if that's the experience he expected. But it was really how he looked. And like that's just one little example, but it speaks
Wow.
to the idea for me that these states are all interconnected, and the more we are able to tune out the default mode network, at least temporarily, to go into these states, the more of that continuity we're actually able to witness. And it really does create a drastic shift in worldview and like my whole framework for how I think about all this, because
Yeah.
suddenly it's like, oh, it's not just this life. It's like a whole network of realms and dimensions, and time isn't real, and so on.
Yeah. I've been having that lately. The whole time thing has been like, you know, it's just so, it's like so non-existent until you look at the clock. Like you look at the clock and you don't really realize how much time has gone by. Like if you're doing something or if you're involved in something, and then you look at the clock and it's not, it's kind of like, here's how I kind of view time, and this just popped up in my mind. So this is funny, hopefully. uh, it's very rare I get these crazy ideas right out, wormhole ideas. Um, time is kind of like the slit, the slit experiment with light and waves. Light is reacts as waves or particles depending on the observer, the state of the observer. So when you're passing light through two slits on a element or on a thing, like as you're passing light, like it behaves as particles, and sometimes I would have to look back at the reference. I'm not getting it right, I don't think, but and it's easy to predict. Like it'll go through one slit at a time, back and forth. If it's behaving like uh, waves, I believe. I think it's like that. It's like rotational until a human observer looks at it. Then becomes more random. Like it's not predictable. It's like, or no, it's the opposite. It's not predictable, and then when you look at it, it becomes predictable, like back and forth. I think, but when you're not looking, when nobody's looking, and it's just being recorded, the data is being recorded. It's very random. So it's like that's kind of like how time I think works. Like we just are here and present in the moment until we look at a clock. And once we look at the clock, our mind knows how to calculate how much time has passed. But until that moment, you will never know. Like you know, I don't think people like stranded on a desert island would ever know what time it is, or even care. Obviously, you look up at the sun and you see it passing, and you'd be able to mark down the days if you're doing the little checks on the wall, saying tick marks on the wall and saying this is how many days have gone by. Like people in prison, like you see in the movies, they like put like 4 and then they cross it off after the 5th day. But that, I think that's kind of interesting because like our reality is also, I think, kind of like that particle wave light wave particle experiment where nothing truly exists until it's observed by a conscious awareness, I guess. I think I've gotten a lot of that too from the book. I don't know if you know of Dr. Robert Lanza, who wrote the book Biocentrism, and it's like a lot of, he's a biologist, but he digs into like particle physics and things like that, and physics in general. But like, I think a lot of that aligns with what we talk about too, with psychedelics and consciousness and all that stuff too, because in that book he's basically saying that if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, the only time a sound truly exists is when there's a conscious observer to witness that sound, because of the air percussion on causing the percussion on our eardrums. That's the only time it really exists, is when we can say that's what we heard was a sound, because it, but like, if someone can't hear anything, then, I mean, it may exist by someone else hearing it. I don't know. I guess it's all perspective.
Yeah, those are always trippy rabbit holes to go down. I feel if I had to guess, the sound wave probably still happened, and I sort of base this on thinking of everything as conscious to a degree. Like if everything is energy and vibration, that doesn't mean it has the same forms of intelligence that we have, but there is a level of consciousness there, right? And that energy and vibration still existed, maybe independent of our span of perception or something like that. That's my offhand, I guess, reaction to that thought. But I definitely think like the initial analogy that you gave about the light changing form based on the observer, that is a great analogy in my opinion. Like I think there's a lot of evidence of one, time changing, to bring it back to specifically time changing depending on what we're doing. A tripping is a great example of that, because a trip can feel like it's taking way longer than it actually is, in terms of the clock. The idea that time flies when we're having fun and all that, it's like that's based on people having that experience at least a moderate level. And like I have had experiences where like for example, the first time I ever did mushrooms, before I ever knew anything about, strictly like recreational exploratory, I didn't know anything about, the power behind psychedelics or what they're really doing or anything like that. I am colorblind for background. And I suddenly saw, when it hit me, I suddenly saw all these colors. I was in a field of trees and grass, and I suddenly saw all these colors that I don't normally see. Like I was able to distinguish between the leaves and the branches in a way I just normally can't. And I had the impression that, these colors, they were probably there anyway, but my presence here as an observer has brought them into this particular interaction with my energy, and therefore they take on this form, from my perspective. Because
Oh, wow.
if we're all connected energy and vibration, like I'm just a different perspective of that, and now I'm able to have this form of perception. And that's kind of how that felt. And I feel like time, again, and I keep saying everything's energy and vibrations because that's how I experienced it in Mushroom Trip. I've heard others say similar things, but I experienced, that when I was approaching non-duality there, it's like everything was, I had no visuals or anything. Everything was just a vibratory state. It was the weirdest trip.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so that was like a takeaway from that. And yeah, it's like with that comes the interconnectedness of everything in this energetic form. So it's like the form is just changing of things based on what it's interacting with, and any observer is just a form of energy that's interacting with that. So it to kind of goes full circle to where you
Yeah.
started with that analogy, as I see it anyway.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I
really
have
cool.
yeah, and I've also seen I and I've seen this repeatedly over multiple trips, and it looked exactly the same every time. But the mushrooms illuminated this energetic field around me, and it looked kind of like this grid, this network of lines that all kind of connected, and had more dimensions than our typical three, and all that. But what was interesting about it is my emotions would change its vibration. So it's like there's this net around me, and
Hmm.
if I was, so I started this point feeling like, oh wow, this is so cool. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't take a higher dose because I'd be able to see it better. That was my thought in that
Uh,
mindset. And so this emotion of disappointment kind of caused it to become more rigid and still. And then I observed that happen. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. What if I try to move to a different emotion? Will this react differently? And it did. Like I focused on like cultivating this love and appreciation for what I was getting to experience. And once I got into that state, it started vibrating so much more, and larger, like swinging back and forth to a larger perceived distance and all this stuff. And it's like I'm seeing this energetic field around us that is um moving according to my emotions. So presumably, if this is a real thing that I'm just able to perceive now because I'm in this state, everybody is contributing to this. And it made tangible this idea that, like, I'm sending you positive vibes or something like that. You know how people
yeah,
will
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
like do this, and a lot of people believe there's really something to it, and I think a lot of other people would say that it's just a
Yeah,
figure of speech and isn't going to have any effect or whatever. But to me, it's like, okay, I actually could see now how our emotions are integrating with this field, and literally sending vibrations, and it just kind of merged with the overall collective. So it comes
yeah.
back to the interconnectedness and continuity of everything,
Wow.
whether it's time, color, emotion, all this stuff. It's like observers are constantly
Yeah,
dictating what is actually going on.
that brings up something interesting. Uh, I didn't know that you were colorblind. Maybe you mentioned it, but I didn't remember if you did. But that is a cool way of thinking about it. Is that when someone like, okay, someone I'll go into, like, there's people that may be disabled or whatever, and they may there's different levels of disabilities, and that are so-called claimed disabilities, but it kind of can take away that idea completely of you know someone someone out there may view a person who's disabled as not being able. They may not be able to do certain things, um, but by changing the perspective of that, and or changing the perspective of what their abilities are, compared to what their abilities are. Like I've always hated the idea of like people thinking that they're better than someone else. You know, like it's always just something that just drove me crazy. And it used to like I probably have a lot of trauma built up from that and things with either from childhood or being in the military where people were just naturally better at certain things than I was. You know, so I kind of felt left out or I wasn't as good as them. You know, and it kind of sucked. But like if you look at things and at the I'll say the first one of the ways I've realized that it's different is in I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but like I've watched the Next Generation like a billion times, and the thing that you mentioned about being colorblind made me think of Commander Geordi LaForge, who's like their engineer on Star Trek: The Next Generation. He wears a visor because he's blind, but the visor can make him see in all these different ways that a normal human can't see because of the way it's wired into tapped into his mind or brain or whatever. So he's able to like when they go on like an away mission, he can look at like the rocks in a cave and he can see what kind of elements are in that just from scanning it with his little visor thing. But like I used to think that's so cool because he's it's far in the future, but far in the future, we don't look at disability anymore. We look at just what their ability is. And like the ability is that, everybody contributes to our society in some way or another, or however they can. And it's okay. However you can do whatever you can do, it's okay. It's not all this like him versus him or her versus her or they versus them and all around, like it's just it gets ridiculous when people see themselves as higher or lower than other individuals in regards to abilities, because Stephen Hawking was in, whatever the disease was that he had, and it was stuck to a wheelchair, but his mind was so freaking advanced and had so many different revolutionary ideas about physics and astrophysics and things that how we just interact with our world, that it's just like you can't look at a physical ability of a person, a human being, and relate that to a quick judgment, and I don't know. I thought of that and I was like, wow, you're colorblind. And it was funny because I wasn't thinking like you can't see certain colors. I was thinking like, what can you see? And that's very interesting. And when you brought up the trip, I was like, that is amazing. Like, it's just, you're seeing something I can't. And that is amazing. Like, you see a different way than I do. And that's what every human, I think, does. We all see things differently. We all have our own perspectives. And I don't know. I think it's just really a freaking cool thing.
Yeah. I would say like, and I wondered when that happened, am I now just seeing the colors that other people see? I don't know. Like it's my wife and I talk about this a lot, in the sense that we both have just such different fields of vision. Like, she wears contacts and has great color vision, where I don't have any need for glasses or contacts and have poor color vision. So it's like we're coming at the world in two different perspectives, from two different perspectives visually. But to your broader point about kind of the perspectives people take on people that are disabled in certain ways, and sort of view them as more broadly disabled rather than I think people have a hard time with what they don't personally relate to. It's easy for us to see our own framework in whatever way we're talking about as ideal. And especially the things like we like about our framework or make us feel good about it. I'm this physical ability or whatever it could be, or I feel like comforted by this perspective, or this makes me feel better than if I were this, those kinds of things. And I think it's sort of a natural like inertia response for people to kind of like, I don't know, dig in their heels a little bit to their own framework as this ideal. And it could be hard to see someone who has these, say another perspective or another degree of ability in a certain way, or perceives something differently as like equally as valid or something, even if they wouldn't come out and say it that way. But a lot of them probably would.
True.
And so to use um, one example, like back when I was in college, my summer job was, I worked with people that had all sorts of um, intellectual disabilities. Is how it's all framed, and in some ways they, don't have the same, say, forms of cognition as others. Say like schizophrenic people, for example, that people that were um, diagnosed with like severe schizophrenia. Some of them that I would work with, it was like they would be telling me so matter of factly that, I would take them to go do activities and things like that. So say I'd take them to the park, and they would, I remember one woman telling me about a conversation she was having with the ducks at the pond. And it was so matter of fact. She wasn't trying to be funny at all. She was just like letting me know. And, you know, at the time it was like, my view of it was, oh, she thinks she had a conversation with these ducks, right? Like
Yeah.
she's got schizophrenia, so she's under this illusion that she had this conversation with these ducks. Now in retrospect, it's like, I think there's a good chance she did have a conversation with those ducks, and she's just on
Probably.
this
Yeah.
wavelength where she's tapped into that. And at that is just a product of the frequencies that she is reaching. In turn, she's not reaching other frequencies that are more maybe adaptive to the life on earth in the way that it is currently lived and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not to say there aren't certain aspects where disability is a real thing. Like my color is a disability in a sense. I mean that very loosely or literally. I don't have the ability to see these colors, but
Yeah.
I think a
I
lot of the
wouldn't want you
times,
trying to like disarm a bomb. Like if like if the blue wire needs to be cut. Like
yeah, I knew from
so
an
it's
early
good.
age. I was gonna say I knew from an early age that I would probably not have even been qualified for the military had that been something I wanted to do, due to my color blindness. At least that's what I was told as a kid.
Yeah, yeah. There's all kinds of like requirements for certain things, and rightfully so for certain tasks and ability. Like some things you need certain abilities to do
Oh, sure.
safely. And it's not a a knock on anyone for their abilities specifically. It's just like some things require certain abilities and other things require others, and that's why we all need to focus on finding our place, maybe, like
Yeah.
because everyone has a place, and like you said, that perspective that can play a role. And yeah, with the person that was talking to the ducks, like I guess I was kind of um, I don't know. I was disillusioned when I was younger. I didn't look at certain things that as abilities or disabilities. And my ex-wife actually pointed it out one time when I was having a random weird conversation at an anime convention with a clearly disabled person who was in a wheelchair, and had some kind of diagnosis, syndrome, whatever. But like back then, like I didn't see that. Like the person asked me something, and then we ended up getting into a conversation about something that we were both interested in, and so I was like very tuned out of the rest of the world and focused on this person and our conversation. And my now ex-wife, um, later that day, or like shortly after that conversation ended, was like, "Why were you talking to that guy? Like, what were you talking about? Like you?" And I was like, "Because we were interested in the same thing, and it was a really cool conversation." And she's like, "Well, he looked like he." I'm like, I didn't notice. I honestly didn't notice what he looked like, and I can't even remember to this day, except I knew it was a guy in a wheelchair. But I think she said he was like drooling and doing all kinds of weird stuff. But like I didn't have that. My perception filter was off, I guess, at that point, because I was like, wow, I'm at an anime convention. I'm having a blast. You know, there's all kinds of people that are into the same thing that I'm into. And so I didn't view anyone as different. We were all just, you know, people that like anime. And so I was like
Yeah.
having fun. But then later I was like, wow, like she sees people for what they visually are. And I was like more recognizing what they were presenting to me informationally, like, and discussion, and I wasn't thinking about what value this person was to my existence or what they can do for me.
Yeah.
Probably why she's my ex-wife. I'll leave that at that. But we're
Yeah.
all here. Yeah.
Isn't it kind of funny in a way how like we have these concepts of things or people even like being weird, like if if someone, just to use a generic example, I feel like if someone likes a unique type of music or something, someone else might say, oh, they like weird music, right? It's really a subjective thing, like what enjoyable music is. Like we all kind of are going to vary
Yeah.
naturally in something like that. But or this person is wearing like weird clothes, and we have these ideas of what like normal and weird is because of the degree of kind of, I guess you could say, conformity that naturally comes along with humans wanting to relate to each other, and
Yeah.
the superficial ways are the first ways that happens. But there's really and I'm losing my train of thought because I smoked before this podcast. Something you said made me think of this idea of, how we kind of have these ideas. Oh yeah, your story there with talking to that guy, and it's like some people then translate that idea of weird to something judgmental, or where they would avoid this person, or And I
Yeah.
think if we all just put down the judgment, we would naturally interact with a lot more people in a lot more ways, and it would be an enriching thing. I think, and now there's like the fact that judgment exists, like people are probably even more hesitant to go off and just strike up conversations with someone based on,
Right.
some offhand thought or interest or something. I don't know.
It's
I
so
guess I'm seeing it as like this thing we've put on ourselves collectively.
you're right, man. And it is. It totally is. I've seen it so many different avenues of my life. Like the judgment is, it can be there and present when you don't even realize that it is, and it's like
Hmm.
something that can be so
Oh yeah.
deeply ingrained into our, uh, like you said, like the way we've adapted, or the way that we've
Hmm.
been brought up, or just exposed to, I guess, like our, like you said, with someone being weird, like, and it's just, we get so used to our own perception that it's like, if something is different, and that brings up what I've learned recently, in the past several years. Like I never thought of myself as a racist. I used to say, no, I'm not racist. And, but I think if you truly look into yourself deeply, everyone is a bit racist in a way, depending on who they are. Because if you think, people fear what they don't understand. And if you don't, even if you, like, throughout my career in the military and all this stuff, I've worked with so many different people. I've been around the world. I've worked with people in different cultures. And there was always this idea that, like, no, I'm not a racist strictly. Like, and honestly, I don't think I'm not like a racist. I'm not a white supremacist or anything like that. But like, there's racist tendencies in everyone, no matter where you're from.
Hmm.
But the problem, I think, came when I used to say that I don't see color.
Mm.
I don't see color. I just see people. And there's a lot of other people that I've met since then, since I've kind of learned a different perspective, is that the people that say that dismiss that person's experience. Like, to appreciate that person's experience is to accept that they are what they are and who and what they look like and what their culture is. Like, accept that this person looks different from me, therefore they are not me, they are them, and their experience is valid and exists. And, and so I'm like, wow, like I don't look at it like that anymore. But it was it was kind of beaten into me when I was in the Marines, because like there was no color in the Marine Corps. Everyone was green. Everybody was green, because if you are a Marine, you're a green fighting machine, and that's what you are. Like, it doesn't matter where you came from, because wherever you came from, that was your past life, and you were slime, you were a worm, you were nothing before you became a Marine. And once you became a Marine is when you became something that I guess exists. I don't know. It's all rubbish at this point. Like,
Yeah.
that's all a
Yeah.
past life that I'm like, okay, I didn't associate it with it really that much then, but some parts got through that I'm like still shaking off these days. But like, for the most part, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's like a fraternity, like I went and joined a group, and I became one of them, and I just became one of them enough to get me through safely and alive. And now I'm here and I'm on the other side, and I'm like, wow, there's there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of bullshit too, so oh, man.
Yeah.
Hey, we
Yeah.
should take a break, man. Real quick, just to split this up, like I was saying before.
Sure.
So if you're ready for a break, and we can come back in just a minute or two, and yeah, everybody hang in
Yeah.
there, stay with us. The rest of the conversation will continue with Stephen from DreamHerbally. Do you have another, like, that's your business, right? Like, that's what you do, like.
Yeah. DreamHerbally is the business. So from our website, dreamherbally.com,
And we'll tag it on the end
people.
of the episode, and make sure that we shout out everything, get all the info. So
Sure, cool. And yeah, I was going to say, from there, people can, not only shop the blends that we have to help with dreaming and other things, but also, link up regarding the services, like, Dreamwork
oh yeah,
services for psychedelic integration. All that stuff is on there. So it's all in one central place, Dream Herbally.
cool. All right, everybody, stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back. Um, I'm here with my friend Steven. You go by Steven or Steve or Steve? I don't think people named Steven go by Steve. It's just unless they're with a V, right? Like, is it?
No, my name is Steven with a PH, but I go interchangeably by Steve or Steven, so
Oh,
I'll go either way.
okay. And you're. Do you have like a? Well, we'll get to that later. I do shout outs, and then I tell people where to find people online and stuff later. But yeah, okay. So we're here, and we've covered a wide range of things, talking specifically about Dreamwork and what you do, and everything we've gotten into. Man, we were talking about like everything. That whole first part of the show. Um, we were digging in deep in some areas about the dream work and dreams, and then we kind of went off into the. I was going off on a tangent last there about people's perspectives of disabilities, um, and even racism and things like that. It's kind of been a big topic lately for me, about because I'm friends with so many different people, but I try to identify with what people are going through. From their cultural standpoints and stuff like that. And I think everyone uh, has a valid perspective from their upbringing, or who they are and what their culture is. And there definitely is a racism is alive and well in the United States. I do believe that, and I see it all the time, especially in the small town that I live in. There are people strictly that just I don't understand it. I don't understand why that you don't want to reach out and embrace people that are different than you and learn about what makes them them. You know, and I may be disillusioned in a way because I've been forced to work with so many different kinds of people and cultures and traveling around the world with my military career and things like that. But I did used to see things differently when I was younger, I'm just now kind of coming awake, I guess, and realizing that there's a lot of different things to take into consideration as far as people and humanity and society and all that. Um, we were talking about psychedelics quite a bit in relation to the dream work that you do and study and things like that. I think from unless there's any points you want to make right now, we can jump into more of I don't know. I'm just kind of winging it. So I don't know whatever
Yeah.
direction you want to go in, man.
Yeah,
Let's
I
hear
mean,
it.
if all is open ended, I could say back to where you last were on the idea of I don't know what idea exactly prompted this thought, but the general topic of racism, I think, like it is there's evidence to show that at very young ages, kids don't exhibit racist behavior, and then there reaches the point. I think the studies have shown that around, I want to say it's around puberty, around the teenage years, where that stuff starts to show up more from a research perspective. So it's almost like, and the mechanisms by which that happens, I don't think are really um, shown too specifically in those studies. But I think there's, parts of the brain are coming online essentially that are forming more of a sense of individuality. And I think that without a collective schema to usher that in say a more healthy way that can manifest in this type of form, like I guess the general idea that I'm trying to put forth is this, that we, going back to everything being continuous energy and having this continuity, there are collective schemas at play that, from my perspective, are there and kind of overarching. And um, you know, thinking of like Rupert Sheldrake's work with morphic resonance and showing that it's like, that they're demonstrating that um, across the collective, concepts are communicated and felt subconsciously, essentially, right? Like uh, dogs, that he showed that like dogs sense when their owners are coming home, was kind of like the name of one of his books or something like that, because of this transfer of energy. And I think then at a greater level, this sounds like a tangent, but I'm trying to come full circle here. So at a
You're
greater
good, man.
level,
You're good.
there are these collective schemas, um, where the behavior is being learned across the globe and like beyond. But um, so when our society is already racist, it's like a learned behavior, not only from children, like seeing their parents' behaviors and hearing, racist comments or whatever it is from their parents, but even the mindset is transmissible. And that's really what I'm trying to get at here. And as long as our collective holds, these types of this illusion of separateness, that manifests as judgment of others, and more often judgment of others that are different from ourselves, that's going to be something we have to contend with, I think. To your breakdown of it. I think that people that say they don't see color, I don't judge that. I think it's coming from a well-meaning place for a lot of people. I think it's a lot of people, and I don't know everyone's intentions and everything, but I think regardless, I try not to judge and just recognize we're all in different places. But I do think a lot of people are coming from this standpoint of, I'm not going to let your different color cause me to look down on you. And, okay, I also appreciate what you're getting at, in that I do think going further, we can actually increase the level of empathy that we're able to feel for others when we start to appreciate their different experiences and the richness that can bring into our lives with appreciating different backgrounds more. The struggles that might have come along with that, the culture that brings, and essentially seeing color in that type of way. I also appreciate where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, and it's not like, and the place I was coming from when I used to say that myself was well intentioned, because I was like, we're all humans and we're all in this shithole together, we're all trying to get through life, and we're all human, we all bleed the same, and all that stuff. But the what I've come to realize is that those things may be true, and it may have been well intentioned, but there's a I don't know. It just seems to me that there's something deeper when you can openly embrace someone's differences, like, and accept that, like, and tell them that I see you. I see that you are you and you're not me, and I appreciate that you are your own entity, and we may be connected in ways we don't know, but we're all individuals, and I can appreciate everyone else's experiences, and that's not to say that I don't still have my own hangups with my own upbringing, or uh, there's the nature versus nurture kind of thing, how you were brought up, and there was a lot of, when I was a kid, there was things that seemed well intentioned, and maybe even joking, kind of racist kind of comments and things I would hear from older siblings, or grandparents, or other family members, or even other friends and stuff, that I just didn't realize at the time, but like it kind of brushed off on me in certain ways, and now I look back and I'm like, man, that really just wasn't cool. Like, it wasn't cool to be in that place, and say those things, because if someone that was different than us at the time of whatever we were talking about was there, like, their own frequencies, or wavelengths could have been affected by our emotions, even though we were being funny, like, if it could have hurt someone else. And that should never be our intention, to hurt someone, like, like and it's a lot of times we say we didn't intend to hurt someone when we actually did hurt someone, but it being mindful enough to know that what you're doing and what your actions or reactions are doing that can cause harm. I think that's just something that I think everyone needs to work on, like, in general, as a collective, as a society, as individuals, that whenever we go out into the world, we may think something is harmless, but we just need to take a quick second and think, what am I doing right now? Could this be interpreted as something harmful? And it's just a mindfulness kind of exercise, I think, that we need to do. Like, and I think it's good if we can be mindful enough about these kind of things, and explore it more, and come up with better ways, obviously, to do things that may work better for each individual. But I myself am hung up in certain ways where, like, if I watch the news, or even a TV show, I will look at however a certain character is acting, and my mind is triggered by my past and my nurturing, um, how I was brought up, and some negative things will come up sometimes about that person or character's, um, individual, or their heritage, or and I think to myself, like, wow, did I really just think that? Like, was that a racist thing to think? Like, and it's like you can it's another rabbit hole to go down, and we can, sometimes, as long as, I think it's cool that I'm catching myself when I'm thinking these things, because a
Mm.
long time ago I was just oblivious and would have said and done anything, and I didn't care what the repercussions were, or who got hurt in the process, and it fucking sucks, man. Like, when you look back at all the people you've hurt, and you think, I really could have done that differently. It then you have to think, okay, I can't get stuck on that. I can't get
Mm.
stuck in the past. I got to move on. I have to learn and grow and evolve from here. Yes, I did that. I admit it. It sucked, you know, but I'm going to try to be better from here on out, you know. And
Mhm.
as long as we're all kind of trying to do that, then it's okay, Like, it's not okay to fucking hurt people, or do things hurtfully, or even if it's like unintentional, but like, as long as you can look back and, like, say, some people probably are sitting in prison right now thinking the same thing, and they're thinking, you know, uh, I will try to be a better person, and that's really all you can do. Like, I guess, like, you can say, once you've accepted what you've done, and then you can kind of start to move on. It really sucks that if you're like, whatever you did got you stuck in prison, that for whatever reason, but that's kind of like that. Maybe that falls back on a little bit of my, like, um, religious upbringing, is like, if you can repent, then you will be saved, you know. But no, like, if you in your own consciousness can admit what you've done, and where you may have kind of gone down the wrong path of whatever, um, as long as your intentions are to completely push forward and continue to grow and evolve, um, and learn, then that's what we can do. That's all we can do, really. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And, I like where that all led, because I think life is growth. Like, we're here to have the experience of working through the issues that we end up experiencing. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's naturally going to come with growing pains, and that's naturally going to come with, um, interactions and whatnot that we might regret. But I think, like you said, holding on to that, regret, or like retrospective self judgment, is not serving us, right? Like, we
Right.
can't get stuck on that,
It's not helping,
and
obviously.
right, it can actually hurt. It can be detrimental to the growth. So I think acceptance, and maintaining like acceptance and sincerity in terms of, wanting to, move forward and continue to grow, is really all that can be asked of us in those cases, right? Like, you can't go back and change something that, may have hurt somebody, that, you wish didn't happen that way. But,
Right.
doing everything you can now to make things right, to learn from it, to move on. It's like, I kind of have the perspective that we have these soul contracts, or whatnot, that we, before we incarnate here for a lifetime, we sign up for certain things. um and that's kind of our path to grow through these experiences. And, whether that's, being on, I don't know, being on this, being in an environment, say, where you learn these behaviors that you later come to wish that you didn't learn, or something like that. It's like, well, okay, like, unlearning those behaviors, and learning, not only unlearning them, but learning, a more constructive, more peaceful way, or whatever it may be, could be just simply part of our path. So I think,
Yeah.
kind of embracing that as like an ever learning, ever growing path is something I see as healthy, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and it's awesome too, because like what you were talking about earlier is about saying that um, the way that we feel or like our emotions can change the frequency or the wavelengths
Mm,
of
yeah.
everything, and it gets passed on,
Yeah.
kind of like that's, you know, we for everything that I learn from in my own little bubble or my existence and my reality, it's a good feeling if I have one of those aha moments and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that all the shit I did before. I mean, yeah, it was all fucked up, but now I know, like, I can kind of take a little pleasure in feeling that hopefully some of that like has pushed out into the universe and others it will affect,
Hmm.
and it's like it's like a domino thing, like you flip the
Yeah.
dominoes and it all kind of goes around and affects everything, and anyone who has done psychedelics realizes that um, not I mean obviously all of our experiences are different, but there is a lot of common things that come up um, when you realize something like during a deep trip. And okay, I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit. One mushroom trip that I had recently, or maybe not quite a year ago, um, it it was after my initial one that I did that I hadn't done any kind of psychedelics in 20 years plus, and then I did a mushroom trip, and that's kind of like when a lot of things happened, and it was very like almost like subconsciously, like it wasn't like I was very blatantly obvious that there was these things popping up, and I was sitting there and I was tripping and like this is what this means, and it was nothing like that. I was sitting there, I was feeling good, I was in a good place. I was watching a cartoon, and me and my wife were together and we watched a cartoon for like a long time, but like after the trip was like the reintegration kind of period, like almost like instantly, like right after I was done tripping, all this flood of emotions and ideas and things came in. And ever since then, I've been working through it. And ever since then, I've been like, wow, okay, I remember that. I remember that trip. And that's when I came up with this idea that, it was okay. Things were going to be okay. And just a ton. It was almost too much to go into, but it was very life changing and made me want to research things and get back into doing things in this life. But
Mm.
moving from there, like the trip that I had where and this relates to the dream work and things in a way, because this trip was very different. I was very deep in a it's almost like I was in different time periods around the world. I was seeing these like visions almost of different places that I've never been, and it almost seemed real, kind of like a lucid dream, where I was part of a society that was um, in I don't know if it was like an ancient culture, but like I know that my skin color was different, and I was a lot younger, um, and I felt like I was part of this community, and it was like it was very brief, I think, because it kept changing. I kept like shifting time periods almost, like I was traveling, literally tripping. I was on a trip. I was on a journey during this time, and I was going to all these different places around the world, and seeing different structures and buildings and various landscape, um, that I'd never seen, but it was it was not like completely intense. Like it wasn't like holy shit, I'm somewhere else, but it felt like natural almost. Like this was happening. Like when I was there, like this is me. I was there. I was in this place, in this body of whoever I was at that time. I thought about it a lot afterwards, and I'm like, was I in a like different time periods? Was I in a past life or something? Um, was I different people in the past? And it rose a lot of questions in my mind. But it kind of now I think back, and it makes me appreciate the fact that along the line of what we were discussing earlier, of how everything's connected and how like the emotions and the wavelengths and the frequencies push out to other people around us and can change things. How dogs can sense things and all that. Like it just makes so much more sense now because there's no such thing as time. Um, I don't know. Like I don't.
Yeah.
There's something right there that I'm trying to get at, but it's like I've been struggling with it for quite a while. But it's like it's a very strange feeling when you feel like you've been other places that you don't know if you've actually been there. And
Yeah.
maybe you can go. I know that you want to talk about those books that you've been reading that I'm really interested in about the out of body experiences or the what's it called
Yeah, I mean, astral
astral
projection or
projection.
out of body
Yeah.
experiences, and that's what I was referencing earlier with Robert Monroe. So, like, yeah, I'm reading through his books right now, so a lot of this stuff is kind of top of mind for me. But I think it totally relates to where you were heading, if I followed correctly where you're heading, because it's back to the idea of the continuity of everything, and you know, if everything is vibrational frequency, it's like these
Yeah,
concepts that feel so
vibration.
different to us, time and space and whatnot. It's like it's all vibrations and it's all connected. So what I was finding especially amazing, from reading Robert Monroe, and I mean, for context, I've had just a few very brief out of body experiences recently. This, astral projection nature, um, and so I kind of got into learning more and reading more about this. And what strikes me is that continuity, in the sense that this state, this state where someone enters this second body, is how Robert Monroe calls it, but basically like the astral body. um it's one portal to so many different other, like, I lack the right word for it, because it's one portal to say, for example, he gives evidence that I personally find compelling. For some reason his stuff resonates with me. I feel like, I don't think he's making it all up. um there, like the example I gave earlier about meeting his friend that had died, but like seeing him at a previous,
Yeah.
at a younger age and all that, like, how would he have known that type of thing. I got evidence that he's interacting with people that have died, people who are dreaming. He provided, what I think was pretty compelling evidence that, someone else was having a dream. He had some interaction with them in the astral body while they were having a dream. um,
Wow.
People who are walking around in waking life, like he literally pinched somebody from the astral realm and they had some effect
Wow.
from it in waking life. um, People that are seemingly part of totally different, maybe earth-like or non-earth-like worlds. So sometimes it's like, this seems like it could be a past life, except like the technology wasn't aligned, like they were more advanced in this way and less advanced in this way, so it doesn't fit our own view of history. Unless, like we had talked about before, unless it goes way back to a time that's
Oh yeah.
before our own collective historical consensus. But the idea is like all of these states, like different times, different places, different forms of currently living people, different forms of people that are not living anymore, are being reached through this one portal. So it's like this realm it's continuous with everything else. It's like the ideas of time and space are all just kind of blended together in this way, and you can, it's a multi-dimensional thing. You can go down this vector, to a different time period, or this vector to a different world, and this vector to like, your own history, and this vector to interact with other people that are living, and so on. So yeah, I think that I don't even remember like exactly what was said to trigger this particular tangent, but whatever you had said was, linked for me with this idea of complete continuity, and we have this illusion of separateness that shows up in all these different ways, and it's a super effective illusion. It can feel like a psychedelic state and a dream state are just different states, and it's like they are in a way, but they can feel more compartmentalized, I think, than they really are, when it's like, yeah, they're different states, but there is connection that's weaved throughout all of it. And that was at the heart of the Dreamwork for psychedelic integration, hypothesis and project and everything, is that connectiveness all comes down to the common denominator of our energy flow. And I feel like when everything gets brought back to that, it's like Robert Monroe is getting off into these states through vibration. Like, like when I've had these few experiences that I've had, it's like, oh, except one actually, where I didn't actually notice this, but like it starts with a vibrational state. You could feel the vibration. In one case, I didn't feel the vibration because I was already out of my body before I realized that I was, that type of thing. But like ultimately, the building blocks of it are energetic vibration, and it's like that links to everything. And to me, it's like this cool paradox where the interconnectedness is on display at the same time as all these different compartments of how our minds, like in their limited human forms, like naturally gravitate toward viewing these things.
Yeah, I mean, this is good stuff, man. I love this, man. I've got so much going on in my head right now that
it's super hard to put this stuff into words, right? Like even when you were talking before this, it's like I get the gist of where you're going, and it's like it can be so hard to articulate.
I'm trying to like find, and I'm sitting there just saying words that I know how to speak, and hoping that it makes sense, and it's just like it is very difficult to get there. The I'm gonna have to read some of those books because they sound very interesting. And when you were talking about like the your experiences, do you want to go into like any have like your experiences that you've had recently, like with that out of body, like the astral projection? Because I want to bring up real quick one of my I'm gonna have to go back and watch this again, but one of my favorite anime series that actually stimulated a lot of things from my childhood, and it may be past trauma and things like that. It seems to be all related to kind of like mental health kind of things. But I watched this anime maybe 15 years ago or something like that. I don't even know if it was that long ago, but it was called like Ghost Hound or something. And the whole premise of the story was about these young kids that could astral project, and in this small town that they were living in. And when they did astral project, they realized that there is a lot more entities, living organisms and things around them. Not necessarily all like super intelligent organisms. Like some were, basically like things that exist in our reality, like earthworms and bugs and just different insects and some animals and then on up to more um, intentional kind of aware um, entities that were in this space when they would astral project. You may check it out at some point, like if you're interested. But like it it struck me back when I watched it because it made me remember some memories of when I was a kid, maybe like I don't know, maybe 10 years old or below, like 8 to 10, that I had these reoccurring dreams of a futuristic city that I had lived in. And it was like a reoccurring dream that I had for several days in a row. And I don't think about it very often. And I just started remembering, and I was like, I remember having these reoccurring dreams, so I started drawing pictures of things that I saw in my dream. And I don't ever really do that. I don't draw pictures of. I used to draw a lot as a kid, but it wasn't things from my dreams. But it was all these different like structures, like buildings, and the silly yet weird thing was there was a McDonald's restaurant logo on something like, but for some reason I had a future. I had a idea that it was far future, and in these dreams I kind of it's so vague right now because it's like been so long, and I hadn't really thought of it in so long, but I do remember drawing those pictures based on the dreams that I had seen a lot of weird things that didn't exist in our reality, like things that would hover, things that could just float or transport you from one spot to another, to get to where you had to go to do normal things, like mail a postcard or like a letter to someone. But like I mean, it was before when I had this dream, like email and stuff didn't exist because I'm older than that. Like I we didn't have internet as a kid. Like it was a far fetched idea when I was a kid. I was like, so like when I remember you could take your letter and put it in this thing, and it would just like send it to the other person's like mind, like, and they would just see it, like it would just manifest like a thing, and it was like, wow, so like all these weird things happen in that, and it makes me very, wow, it's weird to think about it now. But shit, where was I going? The damn it, dead space, dead air. Um,
Back to the idea of astral projection.
yeah. Okay. So that anime thing. That's what I was saying. Like, there's. I'm wondering if the astral projection and yeah. So I'll send you a link on where to get or where to view that anime. But excuse me. I want to hear where you've gone so far with that. Like, and what got you into those books and stuff.
Yeah, it sounded like you were you were kind of going back to this idea that maybe as a kid you had these ideas which you wouldn't have seen in typical waking life again. So somehow from that realm you're getting this, and I don't know if like that would be something pertaining to just the general intelligence of the dream state. Like, people have come up with inventions and all this, through their dreams, because the dream state kind of, presents things that they didn't already know in waking life. Or, if that could have been the idea that I think there's a lot of evidence that kids don't always enter life having fully forgotten whatever was going on for them, quote, before, I put that in quotes because time, like, what we think of as past lives, they really think of as like parallel lives because everything is essentially parallel. But
Yeah.
You know, like I think there are like really interesting series. Like I've seen some like Twitter threads and stuff where people are basically saying things that their young kids, like 3, 4 years old, a lot of times have said to them, just matter of factly, that indicate, oh, they wouldn't have known this from their current life, that indicate some like either past experience, other life experience, other worldly experience, spiritual experience, that type of thing, um,
Yeah.
or just like crazy, like intelligent download or something that they have come up with. And I think that's even more common with kids because they haven't gotten to um, be conditioned for as long for this particular life
Right.
on Earth. But anyway, that was where, that was my perception of kind of where you were going, and then
So
my
like,
reaction to it. But
yeah, with your astral projection like experiences, like you said, there was a few like recently, or even that one that wasn't necessarily like vibrational, or
yeah,
um,
so sure, to get into mine. I mean, I don't have my experiences pale in comparison to like what you can read from Robert Monroe, but basically like I so when I dream, you know, I'm actively into dreaming now. Like I have had my
it's muted.
um
Yeah.
had my dream tea, you know, for it was at least a year I had been having my dream tea when this started, and I was already, you know, having a few lucid dreams a month, that kind of thing. Um, and eventually one time I was in this place where
Tell
I
the story.
realized I had left my body in my bedroom, and I was like in the hallway outside my bedroom, and I could not tell. Normally, if I'm in a lucid dream, I if I'm in a dream and I think to question whether something's a dream, I will recognize that it's a dream. I
Mm.
if I for me, it's about getting to the point where I think to question it in the first place.
Yeah.
So in this case, I was questioning it, and I couldn't tell. I was like, I don't know if there's nothing that makes this seem like a dream, because everything was as clear as it is in waking life. I
Oh wow.
was like in my house, seeing the hallway in my house as clear as I can in waking life, which is not normally how my dreams are. You know, like even for all
Yeah.
the vivid dreams, like they don't compare to waking life. And so it just felt like I was there. And I'm like, then I realized I didn't have my body. And, you know, initially there's there's like a tendency to freak out, and then uh um like a combating tendency to go with this. And in this particular case, like I avoided the freak out a little longer, and I'm like, oh, I remember that, you know, people when they get outside their body, they can like travel through walls and like, you know, all this kind of stuff. And so I went down the hallway to my house. In my house, my kitchen, you know, I saw my kitchen, everything looked kind of the same as it normally does. And I went to go out of the house, and I picked up speed, accelerated extremely fast, went through the window outside into the like over the street in front of my house. And then the speed, like the velocity of it in this form was like too much for me to handle, and I snapped back into my body. That was
Wow.
the first time this happened. And then, you know, that was just like unprovoked. I wasn't trying to do that. And, you know, a lot of probably a couple months went on, and I didn't have any other experiences exactly like that, and it just stood out because it was so different from a dream. It was, and bear in mind, like people debate so much about whether astral projection and lucid dreaming are really the same thing or not, and to me it's all semantics, because it's like everything has this underlying continuity, but at the same time we experience things with some differences. So
Yeah.
that's almost like a side point to me, but this was different from anything I had ever experienced in any altered state, dreaming or psychedelic. And the main thing that stood out was that clarity of everything. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the it was really striking how everything was just how it is in waking life. So, you know, a couple months later, I was in this, you know, I enjoy working with like a hypnagogic state, um, where, you know, I'm kind of like on that edge between waking and sleeping. And I was in that state, and um, with the help of cannabis, I would say in this case, um, I, which by the way, I don't actually think helps astral projection like most of the time because it has that effect. But I do find during hypnagogia during the day, for some reason, um, it can kind of make things a little more like easy to maintain the hypnagogic state, if that makes sense. So anyway, from that state, I felt the vibrations coming on, which I didn't have the first time, but I just felt these interesting vibrations, which I had known from just reading, to associate with astral projection. And it's like suddenly I'm like seeing my bedroom with my eyes closed with the same clarity, where it's like exactly how it normally looks, but there are like a couple things that are out of place, so it's not exactly the way my bedroom is now in waking life. It's like a version of that is just very similar. And seeing that clarity again, here, feeling the vibrations, realizing what's happening, there's like this overwhelming sense of fear that can come on, because we're really not conditioned to be comfortable outside of our bodies, at
Yeah.
least not in the conscious mind. Like I think we leave our bodies a lot during sleep, but subconsciously, and when the conscious mind recognizes that it's out of the body, like it does naturally have this reaction to get back in the body. And in this particular state, for me, it's like I could get to the point of like visualizing this around me, but like I get too scared to go too far away from my body, so I end up snapping back. So it's all my other, after that first experience, all my other out of body experiences have been just like in my bedroom,
Mm.
and observing around me like in this way. And I say all my other, I think there were like two other times. This is not a lot at all. I don't mean to sound
Yeah.
experienced in this. It's just these are the type of experiences that have kind of like set off my interest in
Yeah, and
in this area.
it's very interesting because I think there's a lot of there's probably a lot of people that have those kind of, I don't,
Hmm.
how did you say it? What, I don't really know what that means, like the hypnagogic or
Yeah, the hypnagogic state. It's like
hypnagogic,
it's that
but
period like when you're falling asleep, that you're like between asleep and awake.
yeah,
So it's like if you get to this point where you might come out of it and be like, did I doze off? Like I'm not really sure if I dozed off. Like I was that on the edge between, like I'm not
yeah,
sure that I was awake, but I'm not sure that I was asleep, that kind of state. And we have a lot of I mean, different people experience it in different ways. Some are more visual, and others are more vibratory, and so on. But we have these what feel like deep experiences while in that state, and then can like immediately forget it
mm,
after, because it's like that memory mechanism is shut off as if we're sleeping, but we're like conscious enough to experience it.
yeah.
So it's, I don't know, for me it's been the state that has kind of catalyzed, I'd say, like three of the four experiences
Yeah,
I've had.
and I've had, thinking back, like I've had several of those similar experiences where I remember I lived in a small apartment, studio apartment, before I joined the military when I was, I think I was 20 at the time, and I lived in this small one bedroom, or it was like a one room, literally one room, and it had a little hallway with a bathroom and a closet, and then a little side kitchen area that I was renting in St. Louis at the time. And I remember getting home from work one day in the afternoon, and I ate a sandwich, and then I laid down on my bed. I didn't even have a bed. This is how poor I was. I went to work, and I came home, and my little one room apartment had a small mattress type thing that was on the floor, and I had a huge Spider-Man uh, sleeping bag that would unzip into a big thing that I used as a comforter, and and I laid on that, and I had a regular blanket. Um, but I remember laying there after I ate that sandwich, and I wasn't drinking, I wasn't on any hallucinogens or anything, but I remember laying there and being in that between awake and sleep state, and I think I was just so exhausted and tired. But like I was laying there with my eyes closed, but it seemed like my eyes were open, and I was looking at things around the room because I had like the my bed was in one corner, and then right at the foot of the bed was a little bit of space where I had a couple milk crates with some cushions on them that I used for chairs, and then I had a entertainment center that was a little wood thing inside of a closet that I left the doors open. I had my TV and my game system and my VCR, and I was laying in bed, but I could see all this stuff around me in my apartment.
Hmm.
And then I kind of looked up towards the window and I saw what looked like a bag hanging. And I'm like, that's not right. I don't have a bag hanging in by the window right there next to the closet in my entertainment center. And inside the bag was like a human head. And I'm like, what, what, what the fuck is that? Like, where am I? What is going on? And it was almost like a sleep paralysis kind of thing where I couldn't wake myself up, but I was feeling like I was awake and looking around, and I was like looking, and I saw this bag hanging. It was like a potato sack kind of thing, like hanging up by the window, and I was like, and it had this head in it, and I'm like, this is fucking crazy. And I, like you said, I was kind of freaking out, and I was like, what is going on? And then eventually I opened my eyes, and I was like, I thought I was awake. Like, did that happen? And then I called a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, this is something weird that just happened. But I got home from work. I ate my combo sandwich with, I worked at a sandwich place at the time, so I used to steal food all the time and make my own food and bring it home with me. And I was like, I just ate a combo sandwich, and I was like, I laid down for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden I was like, still laying there, but I couldn't move. I was like paralyzed. Like I felt like I couldn't move, and then I saw this weird head in a bag on up by the window, and I knew that wasn't right. It wasn't there. And he was like, "Man, you gotta watch them combo sandwiches and go into bed, man. You can't like you can't eat uh, meat sandwiches like it was like salami and ham and like all these mixture of." So I was cracking up. He like lightened the mood, but like there was many times things like that have happened that were weird in that state um, between being awake and sleeping or dreaming, and it's just amazing. That's just one experience, and there's many more, but it's very interesting that we can like have these memories, I guess, of the things around us that we see on a daily basis in such detail that even if we were just sleeping and dreaming like a regular dream of like, I kind of think of it as like recorded images, like we have this imprint of what things look like maybe, but then there's the difference between like an altered state of like, are you actually leaving your body in a sense to seeing things in certain ways? It's very interesting, and I don't know what's going on like most of the time.
I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap going on, and then dreams often do use our own associations and project them out for us to speak to us in our language metaphorically. That's how we extract meaning from dreams, through our associations. And then additionally, part of the continuity of it all means that we're also able to kind of access beyond our own existing brain's associations. So to me, it's kind of all blended in a way, but they show up in different forms, which feel like pretty different experiences a lot of the time. But yeah, that's just my personal perspective on it. It's certainly a mysterious topic, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's cool stuff. Let's go into. I'm gonna have to cut this short a little. It's not short, but we've been going on. We could go on for days, but
I feel like we
let's
could.
talk a little bit about your company that you started and your business and what you do and what you provide to the customers. Like your dream tea, and I will say this, like it's very tasty. Like the Blue Dream blend. Let me see here. Um, yeah, the Blue Dream blend is what I have tried many times. I made a cup last night to start getting back into it. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to make more now. My wife's getting ready to go to bed, but actually she probably would have fallen asleep an hour ago. But she gets up pretty early.
Yeah.
But I made the Blue Dream blend last night. So what made, I mean, obviously you're interested in all this stuff with dreaming and whatnot and the different herbs and natural plant things that can help induce dream states. But let's go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, based on being a cannabis user, I did have a dream state that was not as vibrant. I didn't want to have to give up using weed to have a vibrant dream life, and so um, got into researching these herbs. Got to the point where um, this had really transformed my own dream life personally. Um, I think I might have said it earlier in this conversation that it was like I started having vivid dreams after a week or so, and after a few months started lucid dreaming unexpectedly. Had never had a lucid dream before, but just kind of became so aware in my dream that I recognized an anomaly, and thought to myself like, "Oh, this must be a dream because the stairs are going upstairs to the basement," that type of thing.
Wow.
That was my experience,
Like
and
an MC
as I
Escher
realized.
painting, like things that just go
Yeah.
like upside down.
Yeah, so it's like, I started having these lucid dreams a few times a month, that kind of thing, and um shared it with some friends, family. My wife was using it too. She eventually also started lucid dreaming from it. So we realized we kind of had this blend that was helpful, and um ended up making more of it, where we started um sharing with a broader audience of people, and eventually created a business out of it. Um, the the I guess what we're trying to offer is, because anyone can use herbs to dream. They don't need me to provide them, but a lot of the herbs in and of themselves, they taste bitter, that kind of thing. They're less potent when used individually than used in a combination. So we're trying to optimize both the potency of it and balance that with the sensory experience of consuming it. I like to have sort of a ceremonial, ritualistic feel to it. Drinking the tea at night is a very mindful, present type of task. Such that it doesn't necessarily feel like a task so much as an immersive experience, and having it be something that it has this pleasant aroma, and then you go into the flavors and it's layered and it's like that kind of thing, um was part of what we wanted to create. And then on top of that, have it be actually effective to get people enhancing their dreams if that's what they are using it for. And so that's what we're going for with the Blue Dream blend. And I feel like at this point I've had enough feedback to know that, at least while it does vary for individuals, um, it helps most people who use it consistently. It's a cumulative effect, so it's not necessarily going to be like, one night on night one,
Right.
dreams are crazy, although that happens for some people. um but over time it's a plant to work with synergistically, and I think it can be beneficial for those who want to go down this path.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's important that people realize that even with things like medications, they can be cumulative. Like, I mean, it's not just you take a pill and you feel better, like with like mental health issues and things like that, like it takes a while for medications and stuff to start working in your system and affecting, taking the effect to the different synapses or regions of your brain that it's trying to help or whatever. But like and it's the same with anything, with herbs and different with different substances and stuff like that. I think it's important for people to realize that there's no such thing as a magic concoction that can work like immediately. Like I mean, unless it's unless it's like LSD and you take like however many micrograms of it, like you're going to feel something from that, but it may not be what you want. It's just the effect of that substance. But like a lot of plant medicines and such like that, like do take a cumulative and with medications and like pharmaceuticals, like it builds up. But I think what you're offering is great, like because you're spending the time and you are doing the research for what different herbs, especially with the flavor. Like the Blue Dream blend is the only one I've tried, but like I'm looking on your site now, you've got like the Deep Sleep Dream blend and the Ceremonial Meditation blend, the Pleasure blend. I might have to try that. Ayurvedic, Vedic. How you say that? Ayurvedic.
The Ayurvedic wellness blend.
Ayurvedic wellness blend.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, we expanded it to, kind of, while fundamentally there are dream enhancing ingredients in all of those to different degrees, different blends for different purposes. The Deep Sleep blend is just what it sounds like. It helps dreaming, but it also helps like, if you really want a deeper sleep, I have it on nights when I'm struggling to fall asleep, that kind of thing. The Ceremonial Meditation blend, it's using plants that have been traditionally used in ceremony for this kind of thing. And it helps enhance calm and focus, that kind of thing. So we find it is very conducive to meditating. And the Pleasure blend, it's like a mood boosting type of blend. It gives you like a mild euphoric feeling. It can have like aphrodisiac properties. It's like that type of direction. And then the Ayurvedic wellness blend, it's an adaptogenic blend. It kind of balances your energy. So it can, if you're feeling stress or tension, it can bring you down from that. But if you feel like you need more energy, it can help provide that. So it's kind of keeping you at a balanced level energetically through herbs that have been traditionally used in Ayurvedic medicine. So that's kind of the overview.
No, that's cool. I'm gonna have to try some of the different ones. The Dream blend, I will say that with my limited experience, because I tried it for a couple weeks. I was having, let's see, trying to remember back when I first got it, because it's almost been a year, I think, when I got that, and there was other things I was doing at the time. I was microdosing and trying to get off of different medications and stuff, and that's worked out well. I was having a lot of very weird and intense dreams that I posted on the Discord community, and we've talked about some of them and things like that here and there. Lately, it hasn't been as intense, and I haven't drank the tea lately, except for like last night. I decided to have some because I knew we were going to be having this talk tonight, and I was like, I want to revisit that, make sure at least I can give you a shout out and say like, wow, the tea really tastes freaking good, man. Like it is excellent. Like I mean, I'm a daily. I had totally cut out coffee from my life a couple years ago, and or maybe like a year and a half, maybe more. But I totally cut out coffee because I was a daily coffee drinker, and I would drink a lot of coffee, and it just was like, like just I felt insane, and like I was just constantly like on the go, like constantly thinking of things, and my ADHD, my OCD was like going crazy, and I was like, I have to have my coffee. I gotta get going, like, and that's how I'd been for 20 something years in the military. I had to constantly have coffee in the morning, at least a few cups in the morning to get me through the day, and then alcohol in the evenings to calm me down. But like, it was just crazy. I was constantly like an up or downer kind of thing. But when I got off coffee, I was like, I'm just going to drink 1 cup of tea in the morning, and hopefully that will get me by. So I just tried a regular black tea, like a lemon blend or lemon lift. I still use it today. Every morning I have my lemon lift, 1 bag of like Bigelow tea in the morning, and it works. It gets me through the day. But like, um, when I was trying your blend of the Dream, I was like, I was wanting. It was around the time when we started talking about your project and doing that. I was like, I'm going to try this, and I don't know if I tried it for a couple weeks straight, every night. I think I'm very, um, like I said, like ADHD. I forget to do things like here and there, and I'll do it for like 2 3 days at one time, and then I'll like skip 2 3 days, and I'm like, that's not going to work. I need to keep doing it. I need to keep up with it. Now I've been trying to hold myself accountable with things, and I know you've been in on the conversation about the mind sludge kind of thing that our other friend is making and doing, and I'm on like day 5 or something like that of that. And now I'm kind of wondering, because I've been drinking a few beers tonight. I'm like, do I do that now? Like normally I take it right about now, and it's like I write it down on the calendar. I just draw a little brain. Like, when I microdose, I put a little smiley face on the calendar so I know how many days I've done it in a row. So then I can take my day or two off in between, depending on the protocol that I'm using for the microdosing. But for this one, I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, mind sludge, but brain. So I just draw a little brain. My wife picked up on it immediately. She was like, "Is this a little brain?" And I'm like, "Yeah." We're like drawing on the calendars. But I want to eventually get back into the dream state thing, and now that you bring up the astral projection stuff, that makes me curious about other things. I think I have a lot to work on right now, as far as my, as far as things, but I'm so curious, and so I want to know so many things about our consciousness and about other things out there. Um, we're gonna have to wrap up here. So go ahead if you have the if you have anyone you want to give a shout out to. I like to do that every episode. Like if someone wants to shout out someone special in their life or someone on social media or whatever, they can do that. So if you have that, and then go into let's let everybody know where they can find you and find your DreamHerbally stuff to help us dream.
Cool. Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't know the shout out opportunity was coming, or I may have prepared more. You were just talking about that mind sludge. So for anyone that's interested in that, that's a friend within our Discord. So either one of us could link you up with him.
Yeah.
That he speaks so highly of what that has done for him. In terms of his own mental health. So it might be up the alley for some of your listeners. And as far as what else did you say? Oh yeah, where people can find me, the website is just DreamHerbally.com. And yeah, like I was saying earlier, that's where you can access the different blends that we were just talking about, and also if you want to connect about Dreamwork services, do general dream work, as well as if you have had psychedelic experiences recently, work with you to integrate those through Dreamwork, like we were talking about. That project kind of started. So all that is through DreamHerbally.com. And yeah, I'm on DreamHerbally on Instagram, social media in general, if you want to kind of follow along with what we're doing. But yeah, I strongly recommend those uh, for anyone interested in astral projection. Robert Monroe is kind of the pioneer in that space that I feel like his books have been super captivating, and he comes at it in a pretty balanced way,
Yeah,
in
I'll
my
have to check those
experience.
out.
So
Like you said early in the episode, it was like when we started recording, I was like, there's so many books that I have, and I'm like, it's just like a stack of stuff, and it just keeps stacking up, and I'm like, I need to finish things. When am I gonna ever finish all these books? And I keep learning about more and more stuff that I want to read, but I'm definitely gonna um, make a note of those in the episode description too. Would you say it was Robert Monroe? And
yeah,
I remember seeing the pictures and stuff in Discord, um, and that's where I was like, oh, those look really cool. I would like to read those. When will I have time?
yeah.
but but
Yeah,
cool, man. Oh
and
yeah, go
then
ahead.
one last thing I'll say, for those like people from the Discord that are already kind of familiar with some of our blends or listening at all, the ceremonial meditation blend is the newest one, and that's only been out there for a little bit. And I got to give my wife credit for that because this was her creation. She's like a meditation and breathwork facilitator, and
Oh wow.
she kind of came up with this, and I've been kind of wowed by it lately. It's become like my go-to in the daytime when I need to like recenter and feel that calm and focused feeling, whether I'm meditating or not. When I meditate, I tend to do it in the afternoon too. Um, but yeah, that's the latest one on there that hasn't been on there for that long for people that are familiar with DreamHerbally but were not aware of that one. So I could give her a shout out for that because I did not create that
There
one.
you go. Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me as well. Like I would also like to give your wife a shout out because she was the one that I briefly talked about or talked with about the like I wasn't smoking cannabis for like quite a while, like because of the anxiety and paranoia and
Hmm.
stuff that I would get after I had gotten off of other medications and stimulants and things like that. So I kind of taken a long break. And a lot of people had recommended a CBD blend or a
Yeah.
CBD private, what do you call it? A CBD majority um,
Right, strain of
strain.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
just straight flower, but it's like CBD, non-detectable THC.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I don't know if it was you and her or her, but we briefly discussed that on one of the
mhm.
discords, and she sent me some CBD stuff because I can't really get anything here, and that was awesome, man. Like
Nice.
that's what these communities I think are so amazing is it brings the people together that can help each other out. I've tried it a few
Yeah.
times, and I didn't really notice much with it. Um, Maybe I was a little more relaxed, but I think generally I kind of already worked through the majority of my daily anxiety, my natural anxiety that would come up throughout the day. Now it's like the only time I get anxious is if I do smoke a high THC blend of or strain
Hmm.
of weed, and I there it's such a battle because like I want to get high and feel different, but I don't want to feel bad. And I know there's no such thing as good or bad, but it's like the only way I can explain it is that when I get too high, I feel horrible. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like I can't think straight, and I don't like that feeling of not being able to just control how I think. And and supposedly the CBD strains, but like I tried it a few times and I didn't feel high, which was good, I guess, because I didn't feel anxious.
Yeah.
But I wanted to feel different, and so I didn't
Mm,
feel too different. Like I
yeah.
felt
This
good, okay. Like,
right. The CBD, yeah, you're not going to feel high from that. And I find it really subtle. I think it can help with calmness and focus a little bit.
Yeah.
And, but my wife speaks very highly of it. Like she's noticed huge benefits from it. And I think it, the extent to which you notice it varies by person, but it's
And I,
not so much of like an altered state type of feeling
right,
as like a subtle, gentle thing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what, I do need to learn to appreciate it. But I absolutely appreciate what you guys have done for me with sending that out and getting me that stuff so that I can at least try it. I will say that I did use some of that with the DMT that I had, and that
Hmm.
was very different. And I'll talk about that at another time. But versus the other way I had tried to do DMT before, and I've only attempted twice so far, and I want to explore it further, but I'm not like that other major famous podcaster who promotes things. But the DMT is something else, and we'll get into that into another later episode. But yeah, hats off
Yeah.
to your wife, man. I really appreciate what you guys did when sending me that stuff. I would
Yeah.
like
I
to
mean,
get. Oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just to say these communities, they are about sharing what works for us with each other. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. I'm going to give a quick shout out to at Ellen Barstar, my friend Erica on Twitter, who's been dealing with her COVID issues over the past year and a half, 2 years, and she updated us on our last episode, and you can hear that if you listen to the previous episode. But that is, I'm still working on getting that out there. So anyway, shout out to her. Shout out to my wife. My wife Rachel is going to have her gallbladder removed next week. So I don't know if I'll have this episode out by then. So by the time you hear this, she may already be in recovery. And so I just want to wish her well. And I will be there every step of the way because she has been there for me when I had my lower spine surgery, my second lower spine surgery, like 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago. And she helped get me through that. And she's been there for me through all the other insanity that I've been through over the last several years. So shout out to at Get Off My Planet. You can find her on Twitter. She's hilarious. Um, Everybody else, thank you for listening. Steve, I don't know. Animal Energy, Discord community.
Oh,
Like,
good.
you guys are all awesome, man. I really love being in there and checking in. Life has been crazy lately, and I keep getting so many computers to work on lately. It's just making me. I'm like, I'm ready to kind of go back to where I could just chill and not do a whole lot during the day
Mm.
like I used to. But it's good making money at least, so
Yeah.
I'm getting by.
Good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, hell yeah. So, you got any last words,
Yeah.
man? Get them out
No,
there.
just thanks a lot for having me on here. It's been a great conversation, and yeah, appreciate the opportunity to catch up again. It's been a while since we've had a chat, and I think it was
Yeah,
about time. So yeah, all good here. I've totally enjoyed this. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, man. I definitely appreciate you and that project that you did before, man. That was kind of like our little introduction and reading that stuff. I was like, I I don't know, dreaming and our consciousness and psychedelics, the experience, the human experience. It just seems all so relative and connected, and I love it, and I love learning more every day, and I love talking to people like you and Rian and other intelligent people that just have, I don't know, man, it just has changed my world the last couple of years to meet so many people that just have so much to offer. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
Um,
same,
just So, everybody
same
out
here.
there, I thank you for listening. Oh crap, I didn't do the little thing. I don't know. You can find us at on Twitter, the Wormhole Manifest Podcast at Wormfest Pod, and we have an Instagram and a website and all that crap. But I'll list that in the details of the podcast description. So everybody, thank you for listening. Stephen, thanks again, man. We will talk to you all later.
Sounds good. Thank you.
See ya.